Hello, I'm Calvin Dial. Today I am joined by Derek Wheatley, the host of the Weekly Wheatley Podcast, which is a mental health podcast. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Calvin. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. I actually am off this week and I was that excited to talk to you. I came on.
That I'm honoured. Do you know that? I'm honoured you took some time off just to chat to me. It's great.
Yeah, well, this is what I was saying earlier to you. The reason I got you on is because you're one of the only people I know who has done a podcast properly and who has stuck with it. You're nearly on, close to 60 episodes now.
Actually, yeah, 60's out tomorrow. Yeah.
Wow, landmark.
Yeah, it's great. It's been like, I know that I'll let you ask the question, but I suppose what I just wanted to say before it is there is two of us on the podcast. I am the voice, but we do have Sensei John Francis on the tech side of things. And to be honest, without him, it may not have gone to 60 because, you know, in a partnership, and I know you're in a partnership with in Studio Great, and I think the idea of, even if you've come up with an idea, you need sometimes, because your own self-doubt is maybe suggesting otherwise, you need to turn around to someone and say, listen, this is what I'm going to do with this. Even if they turn around and say that's a great idea, it's just that little like voice in your ear that says cool. So I think, yeah, without John, I'd struggle to get here, you know.
I was actually practicing this in the shower. I practiced my intro in the shower and I just forgot to mention John. I was like, I need to mention John Francis, Sensei John Francis, the man behind the podcast. You don't see him, but he's there pulling the strings.
Some people do not believe he's a real human being, but you can.
Oh yeah,
confirm.
He is really real. That's interesting that you're talking about that, because it's one of the things that I started my business on my own years ago, and I was working as an independent graphic designer. And I got to a stage where I just didn't really want to do it anymore. And I was actually at the most successful I was as a designer. I'd got to where I wanted to get. And I said, this is terrible, because I was all alone. I had to deal with money. I had to deal with clients. I had to deal with the work. And it was just really not fun at all. So when when Connor, who I work with in Studio Great, he came back. He was living in Australia, and we always gotten really well in college, and we had a really good working relationship. And the minute we got together and started working on that, it just changed everything. Because like you said, you bounce ideas off each other. And the other thing is they can really pick up where you're not good, what you're not good at. And I don't know about you, but I used to find it hard, like, not admitting, but I try to be kind of good at everything. But the minute I admitted, I was like, I'm not good at this aspect here. Yeah. Everything got better.
I think it's that thing of like, on your own, I think you would overthink everything. Well, I'll speak for myself. So like, I would overthink everything, and I'll sit here and I'll say, like, you've been on the podcast. So say I had Calvin here, and next I had Josh, and next I had whoever it might be. I might look at the three people and go, well, that's not diverse enough. There's no difference between the three people, or there's too many similarities. Then I start overthinking, and then I start thinking, right, forget about them. This is more about you. You're not going to be able to interview them separately, like to have different lives almost. So just to have John in the background, knowing he has complete faith in me and what I'm doing, and I have complete faith in what he's doing. I have no choice. I don't know what he's doing half the time, but for me, it's like just that reassurance, that just to turn around saying, this isn't a bad, or this is a bad idea about having such and such on, and John to turn around and say, no, it's good because you could talk about this or something, and then all of a sudden, you're thinking in a different way.
Yeah, because I suffer from that as well when you're working. Yeah, what I know is I zoom in. I say I'm zoomed in on something, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense if we do that, because this is here and this here. And then I'll say it to someone else, and they'll be like, no, it's fine. Yeah. That's fine. It actually, sometimes you need someone to kind of say, like, fuck it, just do it. And you're like, actually, you're right. Actually, let's just do it. Who cares? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, we are, a natural worrier, for sure. And it's like, I think everybody has that certain part of them. May not be as over the top as maybe I am with worrying, but I think everybody has that certain part of them when they do worry about things. And to be in a partnership like that is it's quite soothing. It's quite it's like I said, it's reassuring and it's quite relaxing to know that somebody has your back, but also that they're tuned into what you're trying to do, like your vision of the thing. So if you're talking about yourself and Connor, like you have the vision of it, um but it might be just that small part of your brain that's telling you otherwise. It's just that little thing that needs to be knocked away, and it's often that other person that does it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's so important. It just
Yeah,
brings you back out further. You can look at it from way up in the sky rather than
yeah,
right down close. And you're like, oh yeah, it doesn't actually matter. Let's just do that.
yeah.
Or and sometimes I have a problem with I never really thought I had this problem, but I do have a problem with elements of perfection, being a
Mm,
perfectionist, and like that really that can ruin you altogether. And it's good to just have this one other person that you can just say, like, instead of having to say it to everyone, like your friends and your
mm,
family, and asking all their opinions, because sometimes they reassure you with things as well, and they're looking after your feelings, whereas you can just say to someone, is this done, or what do we need to do, where you would be like, oh, I have so much work to do on this,
mm.
and then they'll be like, yeah, that's done, that's definitely done, let's just go with that now. Or like you're saying,
Yeah.
like, if you were running it yourself and you're doing the technical stuff, you could be like, oh, does that sound weird when I'm listening to
Mm.
the mic or something? And where someone else be like, nah, it's grand. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I would be with you on the kind of perfectionism side of things, and I guess elements of my OCD comes into it. So even things like, oh, the episode has to be over an hour. Just in my head, it doesn't have to. Why would it have to be over an hour?
Yeah.
But in my head, so then I always think like, oh, what if the guest kind of dries up after half an hour? What am I going to do to stretch it out? You saying about the sound, even like about I bought a new mic there recently, and it was like just relax. I was so worried about this thing, like, and I was just relax about it. Like this, it sound good. It's a good microphone. It sounds fine in your ears, and then you're thinking of what the listener will hear. But I think the listener's not going to be judging the quality. The difference in the quality that you hear in a mic is not going to be applied to a listener. And I guess the same goes if it's a 45-minute episode. What does it matter? But I have to kind of rein that in myself. That's in me, that a kind of OCD thing where I'm just going over, the idea that it has to be over that. And, the same goes for guests, like talking to people. That's gone. Like your perfectionism, your OCD, it's gone when a guest comes on because it's fair game. Then you ask the question, but then they're going to talk for as long and short as they want. So yeah, I get what you mean about the perfectionism, and I get what you mean about having somebody who knows you and is able to say, like to you, like Calvin, it's done. Like put it out there.
Yeah, let's go. Let's
Mm,
do it. Um, the other thing about perfectionism, I find this a lot when I'm working with people, that perfectionism, I always say this quote, perfection kills profit, or
mm,
perfection kills productivity, right? Or perfection kills progress, all the P's, that works. But I do that because I have to remind myself that I find that a lot of people will stop doing a project or before they've even began, because they'll make up all different types of excuses. I don't have the mic, I don't have the camera, I don't have sound, I don't know how to edit anything. All these different blockages that they want to have perfect first. Whereas you
mm.
have to accept that your first one's not going to be that good.
Yeah.
It'll get
Um,
better though. You'll just grow.
yeah, I totally agree. And it's like, the first couple I did on my own, and I was worried about it. I was worried about the mic, like you say. Um, I was worried about kind of everything. I was worried about what I was going to talk about. I was worried about revealing as much of myself as I did, when it comes to the mental health side of things. And it was the first time where I voiced it. I had done it in blogs and stuff, but it was the first time I voiced it. But I suppose once I put the first and second one out and the guests started coming in, it began to grow. I worried about the guests. I worried about like had I picked the right guest rather than what they were going to say, because it was never really about that. But yeah, people have to be patient with as well. Like, it's not going to be you're not going to be Mark Maron on your first episode. It has to grow. Like, someone like Mark Maron is like 1,200 episodes in. It's a long time, spent there. And Joe Rogan or whoever you want to bring up, they have talked their way to where they've been with, or where they are with guests and stuff. So that idea of the first one's gonna be the most professional sounding podcast of all time, just you just put the brakes on a little and realize that you'll work your way up to being really good. And it's the same as interviewing. The first interview you do is going to be a bit weird because you haven't done it before, and you've got to give yourself a little bit of a break too. We're very good at bashing ourselves on the head when things aren't going right, or we see it like that. But no, I think I'd agree. I think you have to work into it and improve as you go along.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, I totally agree. And I think that applies to almost everything in life,
Mm.
actually. Um, I'll ask you a question here. Okay. I have a few little questions, but they're
Yeah,
quite, they're quite open.
yeah, go for it.
Um, when you began the podcast, what was the motivation behind starting it? What was the driving force behind starting it? I'll just tell you why I'm asking this, right?
Mm.
Because I find that what has happened with your podcast is it's an organically grown, and it's when I'm working with businesses, to be asking me, how do we do this? Like, how
Mm.
do we make something that people want to listen to? But it has to come from a true uh, a true motivation. It has to mean something. It has to be something that other people will want to listen to.
Yeah.
Because yours is such a strong message, I feel like that's why the people are listening to it, and that's why people keep coming back, because people are getting value back
Mm.
from listening to your podcast and the topics that you talk about.
Yeah, I guess what the reason, the motivation behind it. I was very ashamed of my mental health for a long time. I'd say 7 or 8 years where I just didn't want people to know. Some people knew, obviously, but I didn't really want many people to know. And uh, when I went into the gym where we train, and I got to know some very sound people in there, and I started writing blogs. I kind of wanted to get things off my chest, and I thought like being ashamed and stuff wasn't really the way to go anymore. I don't think it was helping me in any way to be kind of like that. And the blogs got some very nice, comments back, and people were very positive about them. More than I'd imagined, to be honest with you. I was kind of taken aback by the support. So it went on to, I think I did 20 or so. And then I thought, right, that's kind of exhausted that route. So I didn't do anything for maybe a few months. And then I thought to myself one day, I said, what to do a podcast? It was just one of those ones that pops into your head, and I went on to the mats one day and I loudly proclaimed I was going to do a podcast. And John immediately said, I'll do the text stuff for you. And like we were saying, that's like the little kind of, that's a bit more fire and uh, underneath you, you're going again. That's another person. Uh, and then I thought, well, it's going to have guests because I can only give so much. But I again recorded two episodes where it was all about my journey with regards to mental health. I could not believe the feedback, and especially when the guests came on. Like you were quite early on, and Martin and Josh and those people that came in, and they were open about their mental health. And it became this kind of weird thing where, like Martin says now, that it's more than just a mental health podcast. I'd agree with him as well, but I wanted always to have the two questions that I kind of bring up with each guest. But with listening to it, I think it becomes quite soothing to people at home who might be going through some stuff. Like it just so happened that we started a month before the lockdowns began. So when you're talking about running with that, and people were listening to it through it, and they heard people talking about their mental health in an almost um, a relaxed fashion. It didn't seem like a big deal. It wasn't between the two of us. So I guess it didn't seem like it to the people sitting at home. People want to be able to empathize, sympathize with people. And I think it gives people that opportunity. And since I did a few on my own after the lockdown when I couldn't have people over, and before, the old Zoom thing. Um, when we got back into it, I realized, oh, this is grand because I know I'm hosting the podcast, but it's out of my hands now. It's great. Like everybody comes in kind of has listened to it now, they know what to expect when they come on, particularly with the first two questions, and to go from there. But it's their episode, and it's their choice whether how deep they want to go. And like you've listened to the amount of people who have done that, so open and honest about some serious topics. It's incredible, and that's why it's growing, because of the people. I mean, I'm picking the guests. I understand that, but they're the ones coming on and telling their stories.
Yeah, in a really complex
Mm.
way, what the podcast actually has done, like if we were to analyze it, and you just did this naturally, and this is why I think it's so good to just go do something, because uh you know sorry, there my computer said it was restarting. The why it's so important to natural, or to, I can't remember where I was there, but what I was saying, what was I saying?
Uh, uh, I got there naturally, you said.
Yes, you
But
got
yeah,
there naturally.
yeah.
Sorry, you got there naturally, but it's such a complicated thing, right? So what you started the podcast to do was to take the shame away from your
Mm,
own mental health. Like you were ashamed of your own mental health, but it's because people don't talk about it, and we have this weird perspective that we should be ashamed of it.
mm,
That's complicated, right? That's really complex in itself. But what you did with the podcast by bringing on guests and everyone's talking about, to the listener, you are bringing down the listeners' shame of their mental health, because they're going, oh, them guys, that's who them, they suffer from that, or
yeah.
they feel like that as well. I didn't think they'd feel like that. They're not like me or whatever.
Yeah.
Why? But that's what you're doing.
Mm.
So it just goes to show it, by being really honest and really open, the complexity of an issue that you can start to solve with a podcast.
Yeah, that's 100% what I try to explain, but maybe not as well as you did just there. But it's that idea of I gave up my privacy when it comes to mental health, and it's only been a good thing for me. Like, and as we kind of progressed through the episodes, the people were coming on with their guard down, and they were just knowing that because I had told everything, and I was happy to do that. People feel more comfortable with the idea of doing it, because when you're talking to someone, you're not focusing on, oh, look, there's people watching or there's people listening. When you're talking one on one to person, it pretty quickly just becomes a one on one conversation. Like, doesn't matter that it's being recorded. And I think people realize that. And what's been really, really kind of overwhelming for me is when people go away from it and, message me or whatever it might be, and come back and say what an amazing experience was to just talk about that stuff openly. Um, if I can be the one to facilitate that, it's class for me, and it's healing for me, because I get to talk to these people as well. And I do butt in on people's answers sometimes, because I can say, that's exactly how I was feeling. What did you do? And I'm learning all the time. So it's an amazing kind of bond that you get with a guest, and some of them have actually continued on as friends, that kind of a thing. So yeah, it's pretty amazing that, an idea that I really just wanted to get some stuff off my chest has become something that's very, very positive for me.
Yeah, it's almost completely changed since you
Mm,
since you started, because you literally are episode by episode bringing down the stigma, I suppose, or
yeah.
the taboo of mental health, and that you are a weak person if you have
Mm.
mental health issues, which is crazy. But it does seem to be a deep rooted belief.
Yeah. I think shame. I talked a little bit about shame there recently. I was on a live one. It wasn't on the podcast, and I thought the idea of us carrying shame with us all our lives, is incredible. Like, to think about it, to be carrying something that isn't to be shameful about, but we are led to believe it is. And it's that idea, that I was carrying this shame with me whilst I was trying to battle against, a severe anxiety problem, to be, diagnosed with depression, and then for it to be changed to bipolar 2. And then I'm trying to deal with all this stuff, and at the same time I'm feeling shamed for it, it was my own kind of thing. But I'm sure you can kind of I'm sure all of us can kind of, relate to it in some way, that the Irish people are quite good at shame. We are very good at holding this shame, and whether it goes back to, Catholic guilt or whatever it might be. It's sad though, and it's to remove that and to find an avenue to remove that is pretty incredible. So, I suppose it goes back to what you say about starting things and people not being able to start things because they're worried about it, or they're, perfectionists and they think they won't get it right. Um, it's amazing what you'll do, or what you'll become if you do start something.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And the shame thing is so sophisticated as well,
Yeah.
because I've been thinking about this a lot in the last few months anyway. The shame is almost worse than the thing.
Mm.
It's like a secondary feeling that's almost worse. You're feeling ashamed of certain things, or ashamed of yourself, or the idea of I should be feeling good all the time. This shame comes in. And even I was on the last episode we were talking about money, asking for money. You're not worried about asking for money. You're worried about the shame that comes with asking for money, and it's just so sophisticated, and it all boils back down to that. For me, anyway, I defined. And that's kind of built in as what the people think about me as well.
Yeah, like, because the shame, like, the thing about it for me, like, I read a novel called Shuggy Bain. That was the reason I started thinking about shame, because I started to think about the characters within the story were feeling shame because of, poverty, all these economic situations. But then it got me thinking about the mental health side of things, and it got me thinking about how all these things that we're really ashamed of have either been forced upon us in some way, or being a chemical imbalance in another way. Um, it's rarely the person's fault for the shame that they
Oh
carry,
yeah, yeah.
and it's amazing how we will carry it for our whole lives sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, shame is a real killer. And then yeah, you could go into that. That's shame, shame, shame. You could even wonder then, what is there to be ashamed of? It's certain things. Because we're talking about shame, right? First thing you think about is like something really, really bad. You
Mm,
could feel ashamed about, oh, I shouldn't have said that. When I was talking to that one person, and then I said that thing, and it might be nothing, but
yeah,
if you're, you zoom in, and it's tough.
yeah.
But was that a big thing when you started the podcast? That, it's not so much shame, but thinking about, how did it feel to start? Because if you're ashamed of your mental health story, and you're worried about what people think of you, you're worried about this, like, what did it feel like for you? And was that a driving force? Even when you said it at jiu-jitsu, I'm
Mm.
going to do a podcast, did you do that to be like, if I say it, I have to do it? Was that a
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely said it for that reason. Um, I really wanted to do it, but it's going back to what you said about starting something new and being worried about, starting something new. So I thought if I said it out loud in front of people, that I'd have to do it, because people say, "Oh, when's your podcast starting? When's your podcast starting?" And then it kind of pushes you into it a little bit. Um, but it's that sometimes that's okay, like, to kind of put it out there and kind of see what the kind of reception is. I knew that people weren't going to turn around. It's too good of a group in there to turn some people to be, smart about, and turn around and say, "Nah, that's what would you be setting up a podcast for?" The idea that people knew about my mental health already was a bonus, because I didn't have to go into an explanation of, "Well, you'll see," kind of a thing. So
yeah.
when I did start it, it was like they kind of knew what was coming. But yeah, I guess, like, there is sometimes not a bad thing of going, yeah, I'm gonna start that, and for you just to put it out there, so someone will come back to you and say, "Are you gonna do that?" And then you kind of, even then you'll go, "Yeah, no, I am definitely," and then you'll go and do it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so as well, because like, I avoid doing things all the time that I know I should do and I want to do, and like, I always lately I've been like, when I feel that because I get like a gut response if I
Mm,
am if I'm nervous or anxious about something, and I like really want to not do it, and I only starting to understand now that means I just am anxious about it,
Yeah.
like even coming on today to do this, I was a bit like, something in my head was like, will I move it to next week? Maybe, you just always be doing that. So you have to fight through it, but it's very difficult to fight through that as well. And I think that's what might stop a lot of people from not only starting a podcast, but doing a lot of projects or things that they would like to do.
Yeah. You mentioned it actually about, people who maybe who've started a podcast and maybe only got to maybe 5 episodes and then they've stopped doing it. I think the hardest part of it is when you are starting to feel a little bit, worried about the next guest coming on, who's the next guest going to be, or you start thinking about, like I'm not great at writing questions, like, what am I going to do with this? And it becomes like, it is just easier, just say I'll leave it. And someone said to me recently on the podcast about like, um, about the fact that it's a weekly thing. And I thought, yeah, but like, it's almost like we made it a weekly thing because it's weekly. we should have called it bi-weekly, or whatever the term would be for it to be at once every 2 weeks. But at the same time, like when I talk about the lockdown and stuff like that, it's helped me along an awful lot. And it's kept my mind focused and my mind sharp. And there is moments when I'm very anxious, like you just said, that idea of like, oh God, I have to do this today.
Yeah.
It's been building up or whatever for the last couple of nights in your mind and whatever. You know it's going to be grand. Like we know each other. You know what you're going to talk about, but it's still there. Like why is that? Like it's that whole thing of anxiety. It's we need to have some anxiety, but it's brutal at the same time if you have too much of it.
Yeah.
And so I have a few drops of CBD now before I do things, and I'm just I feel okay. I'm ready to go. Like
A couple of whiskeys.
yeah.
But do you know what the thing is, though? The more you do it, the more it just comes down,
Mm.
down, and it's not as bad. Like, and the problem with is if just say me and you were doing it, I avoid it, I go, I'll push it back next week. And I'm going, Derek's a bit tick at me, I think, for pushing it back. Maybe I won't do it. I'll just say it to him. Maybe I don't know if I'll even bother writing to him again. By avoiding it, you just make it way worse. So I always think it, and I have to do that, force myself to do a lot of that stuff with work. When I'm working and things, I just go and do it. Like, and it might not be in a horrible level where it's, really anxious, but say I have paperwork to do or something, like I leave it off so long and so long. And one thing that you just mentioned there about it being a weekly thing, right? I think that was an excellent idea, because at the start I was like, oh, a week, that's a bit stressful, right? But I'm like, that's a really good idea, because at the moment I work with time blocks. Right. So I have half an hour now to answer all these emails, or I'll half an hour now to write this thing or this. So I'll write, and I'll make the time less than I think it will take me to do it. And I get so much more done. Whereas if I don't have a time block, I could spend all day on my emails. And the same could be for ye, right? For the podcast. Like if you didn't do a weekly one, how long do you think it would take you to get a podcast done?
Yeah, you're actually dead right. I mean, just thinking that off straight when you said that, you're dead right. I wouldn't even be a 2 week thing. Would probably push over it because it's so much easier then. It's just there. You know there's going to be another episode, but you don't have to worry about when it's going to be. And it wouldn't be the correct way, especially for the way my mind works with like anxiety, OCD, things like that. It would be that case of what you said about pushing things back and like, oh, we could do it next week because it's grand. Nobody's expecting it on the Wednesday. There's almost a nice thing about expectation, about knowing that my mom is waiting for it to come out at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, because I know that I will go and do it on the weekend, get it, sent to John, and then John does what he has to do. Time blocks is very interesting. I've been doing it, but not the way you've been doing it, because you've thought about it and you know what it is. I do this with the Zoom calls. I put 2.5 hours on the Zoom call. When I'm setting up the Zoom call, I know it's not going to be 2.5 hours. It's going to be maybe an hour and 20, an hour and a half. But even when I knock it off, I still think of that 2.5 hours, and I think, right, what I'll do now is I'll immediately go into the episode, convert it to MP3, put it through Audacity, and send it to John.
Yes.
So you know what I mean? You have that and like you'll come out of that normally maybe 2 hours, and it's done. It's perfect.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, right? But my body and brain would do is tries everything. If I do the podcast hour and a half and I have that hour left, I'm like, you know what I should do? I'll do the MP3 now. I would do everything to try not to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll spend an hour at it tomorrow. I'll do it this. But when you do have that time and you're like, no, I have to do it. You get it done in like 10 minutes. Then you're like, what this? No, it's all done. Everything's done. It's very weird. I have to trick my brain into doing stuff. Today's episode is sponsored by Studio Great. Studio Great is an Irish design studio that specializes in brand design, website development, and video production. Studio Great was founded by myself and Connor English, and we built it on the idea that better brands make better lives. We have offices located in both Athlone and Mullingar, County Westmeath. We work with a small network of expert designers and creatives to deliver world-class brand design, website development, and video production. We've over 10 years of experience working at the highest international standards, and we bring that experience and intensity to every project we work on. The website address is www.studiogreat.eu.
You talked about a bit to me about it before, about anxiety, and the anxiety of approaching projects more than anything. And you were kind of figuring it out as we, on the spot or over those couple of weeks, whenever. And the anxiety you had of just finishing it, and you were talking to me about that idea of putting it on the long finger kind of a thing, and I'll do that tomorrow, whatever. And I don't know if you had it figured quite out back then, but you seem to have it now, which is really cool.
Yeah, I didn't have it figured out then at all. So the problem would be I would work really hard on a project, we get everything done, and then just as the project's about to be finished, these little small things, I'd be like, and I keep leaving them. And what the problem with it is, you're kind of like, is anything ever really done now? Then it's all just kind of finished, but not really. Just because I won't sit down for half an hour and just go, right, I'll do this. So yeah, it's like I have to force it. And the way I work it now as well is that I don't say I'll get that done in that time frame. I'm just doing it for that time. For that half hour, I'm sitting down and doing it. So that means I don't bleed over.
But it's a perfect way to think about everything that you have to do, like, and it doesn't have to be just work or your podcast, or it could be exercise. That's another thing. It could be just like you're talking about these blocks, and it's just to get into that mindset of like, this is when I'm going to do it in this time, or I'm doing it in this time. If you get that into your head and get that routine, like regiment going, I think that works for everything, really.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. Within reason as well. Within reason, but everything's within reason. But no, definitely, I think it does. The other one last thing about it is what's good about it is if you miss it, then that's it. You have to do it the next day then instead. You're not allowed to go now. You have other stuff to do now. So it kind of just trains you to, all right, let's just get it done then.
That the overhang of something is not a nice feeling. I don't find it to be a nice feeling. I think only once did we have to swap around a scheduled interview that we had, and it was like by 2 hours or something. But that idea of like, I can't say I'll do it in a couple of days, it just works for me, because I would, like you say, how long would the episode? I'd have maybe 4 or 5 episodes out by now, not 60,
Deleting loads of them. We'll do that again, maybe. One of the big things you were talking about there as well was consistency. Consistency, because we're talking about the podcast as it's not a business, but it's a I don't know, it's a project.
It's a project.
Yeah. So one of the main things about project is people and consistency. My thing is, you have to be around enough. You have to keep add until everyone knows that you're that guy that's there, that's doing the mental health podcast or the weekly, you're that. And what happens, I find, is when people are on the inside of a project, you start thinking, well, everyone's heard this before, or everyone knows the message now. Maybe we should change it up, or is it even hitting or whatever? But it's all about consistency. That's a massive part of it.
Yeah.
So just with you, I notice that your consistency is excellent. How do you keep it up? What helps you?
I guess in a roundabout way, the OCD helps a bit. I
Yeah.
think that helps a bit with in terms of postings, at certain times. I know now that there's a set time that I'm going to do it. I think consistency, I've always been quite consistent no, let me scratch that. In the last few years, I've been quite consistent. I wouldn't have been when I was younger, but I'd say when mental health and anxiety has a great way of changing routines and all these things that you like to do and want to do. So I kind of built myself up from scratch, we'll say, right? So now I am more consistent with things like training or you know uh, anything that I enjoy doing. I'm consistent with it because I know it's a good thing for me. It has to be good for my head, and I know the podcast is good for my head. That keeps the consistency there. I enjoy it. I've met some very good people, like along the way, chatting to them. That, but it's that. I guess it's that kind of slightly selfish side of things where your mental health is improving all the time because of the podcast, and I haven't had any massive mood swings or changes in quite a while now. Probably in over a year, and that's how long the podcast is going, over a year now. So I think consistency is definitely helped by an improvement in the very thing you're doing the podcast for. It just seems to work that way. But I've talked to people as well. I've talked to you about it. I've talked to Josh about it, for instance, who's someone who my friend Josh. He's someone who's very good at rationalizing things. Um, and he's very good at kind of giving you that kind of little bit of you're doing well here, keep it going. My parents are very similar. You do need all that interaction as well. Like, you can't, yourself, you can't just be sitting there in front of the microphone. You're surrounded by hordes of people, and they've all told you how well you're doing, and they're glad to see you very happy. My grandfather's like 94 years of age, and he says, "Oh, I'm very proud of you." That's such a nice thing to hear, you know. Um, so that's kind of a long-winded way of saying, I guess it's a lot of people have kept me pretty consistent.
Brilliant. That's brilliant, because you're a perfect case study for because we talk about business a lot in this right. You're a perfect example of what businesses don't do and need to do, right?
Yeah.
Because you have no alternative motive, right? A lot of businesses start, or businesses, people that have businesses, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is just what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a business podcast. I'm promoting our ideas. We have complex ideas. We're going to go into them here. Other people like to hear it because it helps other people with their business. That's the idea, right? That's the idea. That's it. There's no alternative motive behind it, i.e., how do we make money out of this by fooling people into listening to our podcast? You'd be surprised how many people think this, right? They'll go, how do we do it now, and how can we make money out of it in the first few episodes? And the difference between yours is that you are trying to make a change to people's lives, and that's why people watch yours, and that's why people listen to yours. And it might be a small change, little tiny one, might be the tiniest change ever. You might say, I started using CBD and it helped me a little bit. And now that someone goes, might try that CBD. I started taking CBD. Ooh, I feel great now. Tiny change, but you're still doing it. That's the motive. And like you said, as well as that, you're bringing on change for the people that come onto the podcast. They are talking about their mental health. They're getting that thing out of them as well. They're like, oh, I never talked about before. It's, it's helping me with, I face injury. It's not that bad talking about. Same with the audience are feeling that off it as well. When you have on a big sports star, all the sports stars fans listen to it and go, oh my God, I didn't believe that. That's crazy. I feel like that. And, better think better about my mental health. This is all the different changes you're doing for people and connections you're making with people. That spreads by word of mouth then, because it's a good idea.
Yeah. I was, you put up a blog about word of mouth the other day, which I found very good. And it's one of those things where I've never really had to think about much, I suppose. And then, like you say, with people listening into the podcast, and then you've got people following you, and you don't know who they are. You're very grateful, but you just haven't, you haven't heard of the person before. You can't connect them to someone or whatever. But then you'd kind of think, oh well, maybe it was because such and such was on the show last week and they liked that, and that's a really great thing, because then they hear there's a reason they liked it, because that person was on. Then they hear maybe that person talking about their mental health, and maybe they went through some depressive years or whatever it might be. And like you say, it helps someone. Like, myself and John discussed about, you know, people always put up this Patreon. Is that what it is? Patreon?
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I said, and I don't mean this in a way that's like slagging myself off, because I'm not, but I said, until I think it's a really, really good podcast, I'm not going to do that. But when we do that, it's going to be a nonprofit. We wanted to turn it into a nonprofit podcast, where we could put the money into a mental health charity. Um, this was never to do make money. It was, if it was a selfish reason, it was to help me. If it was an unselfish reason, it was to chat to some people about mental health and and look, if nobody's listening, nobody's listening. It's like, it's not like you can hold people to their phones to make them listen, but it's very rewarding that people are kind of getting something and kind of saying like, oh, I listened today to that, and very interesting that this person went through it. And you kind of can sometimes, because I've had guests on who I've just been inspired by just listening to them talking about stuff which they say before the podcast they've never spoken about. That to me is incredible. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Um, yeah, yeah, that's it's really amazing. The amount of, like, it's something I really really think is everyone can take from what you're after doing, is where when it's not motivated by money, it's motivated by being good
Mm,
or doing something, helping people.
yeah.
Let's help people. Would you listen to a podcast that was just created because people want to make money? What would they even be talking about? You can't come up with a good idea from that.
No, I couldn't.
No, no one can. Why would anyone? So what would it be? A podcast of ads? We're just
Yeah.
watching an hour-long advert.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
sponsors. Yeah.
is the soul there? Are you proud of it? And that's what a couple of big things I'm always saying to people when they're starting a project or a business is you have to be proud of it, and it
Mm.
has to make a change for someone, for them to care. Otherwise, why would anyone care about it?
Yeah, pride is another interesting thing, and I know it's a big subject, and we won't go too deep into it. But I do like the idea of I haven't been someone who's been proud of stuff that I've done. I don't mean I've done bad things. I just haven't been proud of, like, learning a song or writing a song. It's not something that I'm sitting there going, "This is amazing," or whatever it might be. Creative stuff that I've done, but I guess this is kind of the first thing that I've genuinely can honestly say that this is something that I'm very, very proud that I've done and continue to do. But it's hard to find those kind of things. So to get it at my age, it's pretty good. Like,
Yeah, but what's cool about it, you see, is like it's like there is an I get this kind of from the stuff we do with Gamma as well, where I'm like you, as well. I don't really have much pride in anything, and not in a bad way at
yeah,
all. It's just like I've never really like, oh, I'm proud of that. But yeah, Gamma would be something that I am proud of, because like the same thing you like you've said, it's not even it's just its own thing.
mm,
It's not involved with us, it's a community of some
yeah,
sort that, you know, it just grew into this thing. And there's something like exhilarating about the idea of a community grow, and you know, they feed it themselves and it's growing. It's
yeah,
own thing to every person. Like, so the same with with your podcast, it's growing into this thing and everyone has their own idea of what it is. But it's like every, you would say that every member, every person nearly that comes on as a guest owns it, is part
mm,
of it. You know, it's
yeah.
so interesting.
It's bonkers. Like, I love that I've spoken to you about Gamma, and obviously spoken to Philip about it, and that idea of obviously a homegrown thing is very important, but the idea of how important it is to people coming through, like young people coming through MMA in Ireland, and they do feel part of the community. That's great. And like, you post up on Gamma about who do you want to see in an MMA fighter in jiu-jitsu, whatever it might be. And there's loads of people involved, like, and they love to see, particularly young people, love to see the interaction of the fact that you will post back up their response and how important that is to someone, a young person, and to have that outlet. And that's why, like, Gamma is an incredible thing that's happening, like, and it's going to be, it's only going to keep growing. But I do know what you mean about that community aspect to it, where people feel like they're part of it. They are part of it, like, but it's incredible to kind of think. Sometimes you're sitting at home so detached from things, you're sitting at home watching TV program, or whatever it might be you're doing at home, where it's just you're here and the TV's there and that's it. But when you feel like you're part of a conversation, and people can, like, people have reached out to me to come on the show, and they've come on and they've been unbelievable guests. That's my favorite way to get a guest, is like
Yeah.
someone to come, because sometimes you're like, like, you type up something to someone, do you want to come on the podcast?
Yeah.
Because you're so riddled with self-doubt, like,
Embarrassed. Yeah, you're
yeah,
embarrassed. You're think you're scared of being humiliated. Or go,
yeah. It's
no.
like, no, I'm not coming on your podcast. But when someone reaches out and said, "Oh, I'd love to come on your podcast because," and they give you this amazing kind of story, you do feel like, maybe I'm doing something very good and creative here. Finally, it's one of those kind of things. But like that, see, even that's the kind of part of me that won't let it happen. I even said at the end there, I went finally, but you know what I mean. It's like it's a good thing that it's going on.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing about when you're writing to someone to ask them to come on. You're scared of like this. You're like, oh, we'll have to say no. But like, if this is like people have said no to me, and
Yeah,
I'm like, oh well, okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
it's fine. Look, I think I'm getting better at that. I was definitely
Yeah.
one of those people, like, who was just, if anybody said no to me, I was so embarrassed, and But now if someone says no to me, and a couple of people have said no, it's very much a kind of a thing of like, cool, I'll ask the next person. No harm
Yeah.
done. No hard feelings. It's grand.
Yeah, because it's not a personal thing. They probably just don't want to do it, wouldn't like to
Yeah.
do it. And it's funny though that we're hardwired to take that as something on us.
Yeah,
Where it's not even there's if you really were to sit down and look at it, there's no logic,
no.
there's no connection between them saying no and us being stupid.
Yeah, they've never heard of you. They've never heard your podcast. They don't know what it is. It's fine. You don't have to
Uh,
like take it personally. Yeah.
do you think that I find that the best people to ever work with are people who can remove themselves from a project? Do you think that the reason you're letting it grow so much is that you've kind of got out of the way personally?
Yeah, I think like it does. Like, obviously involves a lot of work, with regards to planning and writing the episodes and making sure the next person's happy to do it at this time. That's good, and that's a good amount of time that I enjoy giving up. But I do think that I definitely see myself more as a facilitator now, as just a person who has the microphone and the camera, and we'll go from there. And it's like when I can sit back, um, you know, this week's episode is the first that's going to be on camera. It's the first time that I felt a genuine change in me, but it was just because the camera was on. I was still happy to allow the person their time. It's their episode. It's always the point of it is to be their episode. So I think I have to remove myself a little bit from it. If I didn't, I become kind of a czar or something. I start ruling over everything, and
Yeah.
that wouldn't make a good podcast.
But you'd be surprised how much that happens where people
Mm,
are doing what they want to do
mm,
rather than letting it do what they are. Because I'm sure you found, well, I don't know if you found this, but let me know if you have, right? That as you go on, people start saying, oh, I like this thing. And then I like this thing. And then you're
mm.
going, oh, well, let's do a bit more of this and a little bit more of that
Yeah.
then if people like it. And it starts to kind of grow into its own thing as well from people's feedback. And sometimes I think some people are too personal with project and are like, no, we need to keep it to what I want to do, where that really is a blockage.
Yeah, I was told don't do it weekly. Like, you won't be able to keep up. It'll be too much work. And look, that was a genuine concern on the people's part. It wasn't that they were, having a go at me. But I have heard the other stuff where it's like, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do the Patreon, maybe you should do all this kind of stuff. If I feel that that's something that I need to bring to John, I will. But otherwise, I'm not going to bother him with it. Why would I? But I do think, yeah, if you start listening to other people, I think you lose. I mean, just outside voices that haven't been, involved in the podcast. I think you do lose a certain amount of, originality and your own personality on it. And we were one one person sent us a message after I had a go with Donald Trump one episode, and he's like, oh, I was a great fan, but I'm done now. And it's kind of like,
Mm,
okay, what
yeah.
you can't please everyone. It's an
No.
impossibility. So you have to go by your own instincts on it, and go with go with good guests, and you're laughing.
Well, that's a very important thing as well, because I would be thinking that it's actually better that some people don't like you, because it
Mm.
means that you're specific in some way, because you wouldn't really appeal to your audience if
Yeah,
you were going around saying, well, I'm not going to comment on Donald Trump, or I'm
yeah.
not, you lose something there. And like, you become bland then, and you just
Mm.
blend into the background. And, the real thing about your podcast is, the people that listen to it are people like you.
Yeah, and
Like,
I did have one person tell me that I should start doing debates on it. Um, kind of losing the point of the mental health podcast. I'll
yeah.
be honest. I there is. I think people forget about that. Like that. That's that's what we set up on. That's the kind of platform we've set up on, and we've gone in separate directions. But I want that to be remain there at all times. And if I start having to go at a guest because we disagree over, whatever it is, it does, it's very contradictory then, and it's not, it wouldn't really be for me. It wouldn't make me happy anymore.
No, and it'd be what they would say, off brand.
Off brand is the way. Yeah. Yeah.
The last thing I'll ask you about
Mm,
is, when you put up an episode and it doesn't do that well,
mm.
how do you deal with that? Because I feel like I was actually trying to think of things that stopping people from doing it. And I imagine this is a big one, because sometimes some things just don't really kick off or whatever.
Um, I I've never checked the podcast platforms. I've
Brilliant.
asked John 2 or 3 times early days. I don't know what countries listen to us. I don't know how many people listen to us. I do check the YouTube ones because kind of I suppose it's just because I know how to do that. I don't know how to do the other one, but I do check it. And yeah, look, when they don't get many views, I sit there and I go, well, maybe I did this wrong. Maybe this, maybe this didn't line up with this. Maybe people didn't have the time to listen to it. People have their own lives. Um, they may not have wanted to listen to an episode about CBD, whatever we were talking about. There's ways I can make up all sorts of excuses for it happening, but sometimes it just people are busy, they don't have time for it, it hasn't worked out. It's done. That's I've still been very proud of those, of all the episodes. So I don't try and hold too much, by the numbers really. Like I said, I don't worry about the other one. I don't even think John checks the podcast platforms if I'm honest. But maybe one day I will. But it's not our biggest concern.
Yeah, that's huge. A lot of people, that's very good advice. And if someone can stick to that, I think that is the way to
Mm,
go. Obviously, you can check it every now and then just to make sure you're doing okay, or
mm,
maybe there's something you can work on. But I think generally not to be playing a numbers game like that, because, this world of, judging how successful it is on something like likes and things, like it's,
mm.
you know, we're a lot of us are fooled into thinking, or a lot of people are, we're of the opinion that if you're on social media, like, you need thousands and millions of followers, and everyone's goal is to be Kim Kardashian style following, and that's how you make it. And if you're not
Yeah.
doing that, what's the point? What's even the point of that? But if you have 100 people,
Mm.
let's say you're doing a podcast, you have 100 people every week watch that podcast. That's huge. That's 100 people.
It's very like you don't. It's one of those things that numbers seem to have become very like blurry. And it's the idea of we need millions. 100 people is a big listenership for the podcast. I'm not competing with anybody. I'm not like trying to be better than this person or to turn my podcast into some sort of empire. It's just a podcast. It's just something like we talk about mental health. We hope people take something away from it. If nobody listens to it, I'll be disappointed. But it's not the end of the world. It's just a podcast.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And I just feel like that is something that really throws people. They're like, I'm doing it for 2 weeks now. We only have 100 views.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's 100 people in their houses listening to your pod, you talk. Like,
Yeah.
that's really good.
It is,
And,
yeah.
and they're just scared of that consistency thing. Then they're like, oh, no, I won't do it. But right. So if 100 people watch it, 20% of them really like it. They tell
Mm.
their friends. And they tell two friends listen to the next one. Then you're going
Yeah.
to have 200 and the same and same and same. No, you won't have 200, right? You might have 210.
Yeah.
But like it just grows and grows. But it's all about that consistency of it
Consistency.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think look, if you're 21 years of age and you're starting a podcast, you might have a different way of looking at it. I probably would when I was 21.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You know,
definitely. Yeah.
I think you understand it a lot better than I do with that idea of word of mouth and being consistent, being keeping it on brand, as you say, and the idea of it being something for people to look forward to. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be 10 million.
And the consistency Wednesdays. Like I know it's on Wednesdays every
Yeah.
Wednesday now. I know
Yeah.
every Wednesday it's out. That's when it's out. But that takes time. That takes time. That takes time. That takes time. And if you're not there to be there every Wednesday, then people are going to be like, they won't know it's out every Wednesday. You think about TV shows, like
Yeah.
back in the day when you watch TV, whatever, Friends is on Monday night at 9 o'clock. I actually think that's what it used to be, right?
Yeah.
I still remember that. And if I showed up on a Monday night at 9 o'clock and Friends wasn't on, I'd lose my what's going on here?
Yeah.
So that's what people forget. Like, now we're all in control of our own TV channels. So that consistency needs to be there for it to stick in people's minds. And
yeah, that was a huge thing about scheduling it out for the same day and the same time. And John will laugh when I say this, but he was late a couple of times and I was displeased about it. I'll be honest.
not good, John. Not good. Minus marks there.
Yeah, he did get
The other thing as well is the word of mouth thing. And I have been banging on about this the last while, right? Word of mouth. But it's just, I'm dealing with a lot of people, that are working with companies and a lot of businesses that are on their own, they own their own business. They're stressed. They're so stressed, right? Because they have marketing companies writing blogs, doing videos, writing all this stuff. The only way to reach new customers is Facebook advertising and SEO and Instagram and Google AdWords and and all this mad stuff that no one has time to learn, right? And it's look, it does work at a certain level, but the main thing people should be worried about is word of mouth now. And word of mouth means just do a good thing, like what you're doing. Do a good show, do a good business. Worry about how you talk to your people, worry about what you look, worry about, make sure it's good. That's all you have to do. Because if you look at social media, it's just word of mouth. The biggest thing is, right, if I run a Facebook ad, the Weekly Wheatley Podcast, listen now. No, who's going to want to click on that?
No one.
We all judge it. We go, sponsored.
Yeah.
Bye, good luck. But if I say to my friend, hey, did you ever listen to the Weekly Wheatley Podcast? Kieran Davern was on it there last week. They go, oh, might watch that. So that's how it works.
Yeah. It's I think that, it did help that I was in a gym with over 100 people who were all dead sound, but it does, it's very gratifying when someone comes back to you and says that they heard it through a friend, because I'm not putting ads up on Facebook. I don't have money to be paying Instagram and Facebook to put ads up that won't be looked at or, viewed. You know a lot more about this than me.
Yeah, but don't do it. That's what I know.
It's just that idea of not like this idea that these things are going to work. It's a waste of money. It's
waste.
Go and you can push your brand on, I use, look, I'm not saying I don't use those things. Like, obviously I do. I don't pay money to use them. But that idea of just people talking about it, doing, like you say, Calvin, consistency is a huge thing. But like, be genuine on the podcast and off the podcast. For this is just for myself. Like, be a nice person to people. You can't walk around and act like a, whatever, and expect people to think you're great and your business is great and go support you. I understand that I'm talking from a podcast point of view rather than a business point of view, and people are needing to be, they want it to happen quicker for a business because they have to, they need it to happen. But yeah,
That's one
that,
of the main problems as
yeah,
well.
yeah. That I guess that is like, that idea of it just, and especially in times that are just so weird as well. Like, it's the idea of people trying to get the name out there, but yet maybe not able to get the product out there as quickly as they'd like to. So it is different on it. But yeah, like what I'm kind of learning from this chat with you, Calvin, I guess, is like the best thing that I did was to be consistent with those kind of things.
And honest.
Well, yeah,
And
yeah.
to do it right, because most people are worried about getting viewers instead of making a good podcast.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. They're like, how do I get people to listen? Well, your podcast is shit, so no one's going to listen. You're too worried about trying to get people to listen.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's really weird. The brains work weird. It's kind of confusing for people. When you bite it down, that's what it is.
Yeah, it kind of is, and people lose sight of it because they need to they need to see it as a massive success in other people's eyes, even not their own eyes, like other people's. When it's just, take something from it,
Yeah, exactly. And then,
yourself.
like, what's success? Other people thinking you're good.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
Not a good way to judge success.
No.
Actually, one last thing I'll ask you about Facebook and YouTube ads. Do you see a lot of YouTube ads?
I do see a lot of YouTube ads, yeah.
What do you think it is? Musicians doing YouTube ads of their songs. Have you seen this?
I didn't see that.
Oh man, I'm like, what are you doing?
What's happening here? What do you mean? Just like small short videos, literally ads of their songs,
of their music video. Yeah, sponsored ad of their music video coming on before. So I'm like, this is like the worst thing a musician could ever do.
Imagine Kurt Cobain doing that. It'd be
man,
I'd be devastated.
It's like, it's wrong on so many levels. I don't know. I'm like, if I see a band that has a sponsored ad, I am not liking that band.
No, look, if I wanted to see some funny cat videos, right, and Michael Stipe is singing "Everybody Hurts" before it, I'm out. I'm sorry, Michael. I love REM, but this is not for me. Ridiculous.
Because what it is like, it's someone running into your house and being like, hey, listen to this, and staring at you then.
Yeah.
Listen, keep listening when you're trying to turn it off. No, keep listening. It's so weird. It's the weirdest thing ever.
They're the kind of ads that you can't skip. You know those ones?
Oh man, worst ones ever.
I hate them so much.
This is what I mean about the ads. Like, everyone hates ads. They're the worst things in the world. And then everyone, you know how you get people to listen to your podcast? Ads. So I think, yeah, that's just a bit of a rant at the end there.
That's all right.
Yeah. But Derek, where can we find you?
Oh yes, you can find us. We have a YouTube channel, which is now open to visuals from this week forward, at the Weekly Wheatley. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then obviously it comes out on Spotify and Apple and all the podcast platforms.
Excellent stuff. Well, Derek, thank you very much. This has been a pleasure.
It's been great, Calvin. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. That's it then for today. I suppose you can find Studio Great then on studiogreat.eu, on Instagram and Facebook as well. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye. Today's episode is sponsored by Studio Great. Studio Great is an Irish design studio that specializes in brand design, website development, and video production. Studio Great was founded by myself and Connor English, and we built it on the idea that better brands make better lives. We have offices located in both Athlone and Mullingar, County Westmeath. We work with a small network of expert designers and creatives to deliver world-class brand design, website development, and video production. We've over 10 years of experience working at the highest international standards, and we bring that experience and intensity to every project we work on. The website address is www